where we're coming from to sort of set the scene. So the PHAI, as we call it, which represents Passive House Association of Ireland, is a catalyst for increased awareness of the opportunities and benefit of low energy design based on the passive house principles across the Irish construction industry. Passive house design is proven to be a quality assured route to achieving high performance buildings. And when we look against the context of what's happening at the moment with the declared climate emergency, both in the UK and in Ireland, and the increasing need for low carbon buildings as a result of the ratcheting up of the need to address carbon emissions, and then moreover in recent times a new landscape which is emerging post-pandemic about the need for ventilation in buildings. That really is a moment in time where the Passive House Association of Ireland's mission comes into focus, and that mission is really to promote, to educate, and to facilitate a strong identity and to respond to the growing demand that there is for the Passive House standard currently in the last 2 years and going forward now for future years. So just to say as well, the Passive House Association of Ireland is also an affiliate association, one of 27, assigned to the International Passive House Association. So just after saying all of that, if you like what you see tonight and in our corresponding events in this series, there's a warm invite to come along and join us either as a member or with your business, and I think you'll enjoy what we have to offer as a community and the learning that is potentially here as well. So tonight is the first, as I said, in a series of events, and the program tonight will consist of a guest speaker, and this framework will stay the same for the series. So we will have a guest speaker tonight, followed by being chucked into breakout rooms for a bit of interaction, and then coming back for a short open mic session, and we're really going to try and keep it tight to an hour so that we can go on and enjoy our evening. So it's a short, sharp, energetic event. Okay, so Simon, who do we have tonight then for our first event?
Thanks, Barry. Tonight we've got a man who possibly needs no introduction in Passive House circles, certainly in this part of the world anyway. Our speaker tonight is Thomas O'Leary, who will reflect on the first Passive House in Ireland 15 years on, and an appropriate place to start for this series of webinars. Thomas has many accolades, but anyone who has met him will know his passion for and knowledge of Passive House, and the energy that he brings to promoting the standard. His work has taken him from the early days of building his own Passive House to being involved in the design and delivery of Passive House projects around the world, and maybe we'll get to hear some more about those in future events in the series. Thomas is Managing Director of Mossart and the Passive House Academy, which he established with Art McCormick in 1993. And through these, he is heavily invested in Passive House design, training, and certification in Europe and the United States. I'm sure many people this evening will have benefited from his team's experience and training over the years. And in fact, I think my early days of research into Passive House stumbled across a really informative YouTube video about thermal bridging, where Thomas was going through that. Before I hand over, can I just ask that if you've got any questions during the presentation that you put them into the chat. I'm going to try and collate those so that we can cover, at least some of them after the presentation. So enough for me. Over to Thomas, and we look forward to hearing what you've learned from your project.
Thank you very much, Simon. I appreciate that. And David, if you can allow me to share my screen there. And just to say good evening to everybody. We have two special guests here tonight. My mother, Sheila O'Leary, my wife, Mairead O'Leary, are here as well. And so there's a certain tinge of nervousness this evening, which wouldn't normally be the case. So I think it's the first time presenting in front of my mother. So hopefully I'll do you justice, Sheila. So yeah, we're in setting up this series of events. I sort of put my hand up and said, right, I'll go first. I'll be the first sort of man over the wall. And this evening really is about sharing the experience that I've had with Passive House. It'll be a very personal story. You're going to see some photographs of my family at a very young age and at an older age as well. And it's really the day that I came across Passive House was a day that changed my life and changed my career. And I've never looked back since, and I've really enjoyed it enormously. So I have a lot of slides to get through, possibly too many slides, but let's give it a go here. So a little bit of background about Mossart. We're a firm based in Wicklow, just south of Dublin. We're nearly 30 years in business, and while we started off as an architectural firm, we're quite unusual insofar as we do a lot of energy consulting and a lot of education and training as well. So we're kind of a multidisciplinary firm, and have had a lot of fun in doing high performance building for quite a while. Dave, you just might mute everybody there, so we've no background noise. Like a lot of people in this field, you know, I get inspiration from people. I didn't know anything about Passive House until I came across it, and the very first person who mentioned Passive House in Ireland is the man on the left here, Hans Eek. He's a Swedish architect, and it was the 21st of June 2002. I remember the day, and Hans was in the southwest of Ireland talking about Passive House. And I was so blown away by what I learned. I decided on the spot that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my career. Wolfgang Feist, who many of you know, is the founder of the Passive House Institute, and very much a hero of mine. And lastly, Franz Frundorfer, who really got me on the road to Passive House education, wonderful educator on Passive House, and a very enthusiastic, charming, and professional person. And I just want to sort of give credit where credit is due. Everything I've learned has been from these people. So the thing I love about Passive House is the simplicity of it, quite honestly, and the fact that Passive House does the simple things extremely well. And we often talk about the 5 principles of Passive House, being insulation, air tightness and vapor control, thermal bridging windows, and heat recovery ventilation. And really those 5 principles, if you carry those with you through your building design, whether it's new build or retrofit, whether it's residential or commercial, it'll never really set you that far wrong. And I suppose they are the sort of bedrock of everything we do and all the projects that we work on. So essentially, I was in Tralee. Hans Eek was talking about Passive House, and he was talking about, triple glazed windows and crazy levels of air tightness that we'd never imagined before, and amazing U values. And I was just completely hooked. I mean, and basically from that day on, I just said to myself, right, I want to dedicate all my energies to this. It was like a sort of an epiphany moment for me, and something that I sort of never looked back on. But the problem was I had absolutely no clue what I was doing, literally no clue. I trained in UCD as a landscape architect, and I had no background in building physics. I had no background really in education. I had no background in energy modeling, thermal bridging, vapor movement, all of that kind of stuff. So, but nevertheless, I just sort of jumped in with both feet and said, right, well, I mean, let's give it a go. There's plenty of experts out there that I can lean on. And I'll come back to that image in a little while. But I suppose the main message I want to get across this evening is, if somebody with my background can actually deliver a certified Passive House, nearly 20 years ago, then really architecture technologists have no excuse nowadays, I would say. So I was looking back over an archive of old photographs, and so this is my wife, Mairead, who's on the line this evening, and our 3 children. And so we literally sold our house. We went to a conference. I came home. I was talking about Passive House. I said to my wife, Mairead, we got to build one. Can we sell our house? And she said to me, hold on a second, you want to sell our family home to build an experimental house? And I said, yeah, pretty much. And so the rest is history. So when I look at this photograph now, the twins, they're 18, they're doing their leaving certificate this year. And the eldest girl, Aoife, in the middle, university in Enniskillen. How long we've been at this. So at the time, back in 2002, the building regulations in Ireland didn't really set a very high bar in envelope performance. So essentially, we're in the top bar here. Oops. In the top bar here, you can see all the specifications that you had to hit in terms of U values. Air permeability is amazing. There was no target for air permeability. It wasn't 5, it wasn't 7, it wasn't 10. There was no upper limit. It was quite amazing. On thermal bridging as well, there was no vibe factor, and also on ventilation, it was basically holding the wall ventilation. And then if you look at the passive house formula that we developed for that house, for the house that we built, you know, very low U values, incredibly good windows that were unheard of in Ireland, air tightness that was unheard of, thermal bridging that really wasn't that much appreciated, and mechanical ventilation with heat recovery. And these are things that we all take for granted now. We're all talking about air tightness, we're all talking about heat recovery ventilation, we're all talking about triple glazed windows. But trust me, these were very, very new at the time. So it was quite a steep learning curve. That's my brother-in-law, Patrick Ryan, in the middle there. He's protecting his rake. So he's put a high-vis jacket over his rake so nobody drives over it. I hope there's no health and safety people here. This photograph is not from a health and safety video, although it should be when you look at everything here. But back in those days, things weren't as disciplined as they are now. But the reason I'm showing you this photograph here is that one of the things I'm looking at critically now, or we're looking at in our office, is the amount of concrete that we're using. Concrete is potentially very damaging to the environment because of the embodied energy. And I essentially build a solid, it's got concrete in the foundations, it's concrete in the floors, it's got concrete structure. And quite honestly, in our firm, we prefer not to do that if we can anymore. And that's something I will come back to. So I wanted to show you that photograph. Patrick was a real hero. Patrick is my wife's brother, and he came up to Wicklow for a weekend, and he's still living in Wicklow, and he was the foreman on the first certified passive house in Ireland, and really, really in the deep end. He looks like an Arctic explorer there. I'll come back to the insulation thickness that we had in a few moments, but again, you can get a sense there of the work that was involved in this sort of level of complexity. Again, more concrete here, so and all the insulation, we had 300 millimeters of insulation underneath the floor. At the time, the standard in Ireland was for 50 millimeters. So we were putting in something like 6 times the thickness of insulation that was common in Ireland at the time. And I remember ringing the insulation company, asking them, I had to beg them to give me 300 millimeters thick of insulation. They said I'm crazy. And I said, look, I know that, but just, I want to spend my money, and can you take my money and give me the thickness I need? And so looking back on that now, that was, again, it was quite crazy at the time. So in terms of the house design, on the left, you can see the north elevation. On the right, you can see the south elevation. And again, because I had no idea what I was doing, I was kind of following these very simple principles. Small windows on the north side, large windows on the south side. And we basically arranged the house design so that all the utilitarian rooms, so the mechanical room, the toilets, the ventilation room, the utility room were all on the north side. And obviously then all the bedrooms, sitting room, living, dining, all are on the south side. And that was a really simple principle. And you're going to see some photographs of the houses as we go through. You can see we used low conductivity blocks, these, they were called queen-light blocks at the time. And we used them not only in the floor to wall junction, but actually also on the gables, because this is where the line of insulation will be in the attic, and the same along here. And honestly, like there was almost no construction details available at the time. I was making this up as I go along, and I look back now and just feel very lucky that I happened to kind of think about things at the right time and in the right place. But it really was really was a baptism of fire. I was really quite worried about the pinch point of insulation at the eaves, and I went down to my local roof truss manufacturer, And I said to him, you know, every roof in the world has a pinch point, you know, that goes down to 4 inches. And I need to have, you know, 12 inches of insulation here. How can I do that? And he said, that's simple. He said, we'll just do a bobtail roof truss. I'd never heard of that, of course. And so he made a bobtail roof truss, which allowed me basically to get a ½ meter of insulation right out to the eaves. And again, you know, that's not even common nowadays. Most houses still have that pinch point. And if you've got mold in your house, it's probably going to be at the roof to wall junction. And that's principally due to that confined insulation thickness at that location. So, you know, the solutions for very, very common problems have been around for a very long time and are still not being widely used. This is a ventilation tray here, of course. The idea basically being that the insulation is sort of pushed out against that, but air can still get into the attic to ventilate the attic. So again, I'm looking back at these details now and I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of cool. And that was, you know, back in 2004. Here's a very happy chap. I go, I remember him actually, and it was kind of interesting looking back over these photos. I haven't seen these photographs since wherever, and but we decided to use cellulose insulation in the attic. I don't know where we got that idea from, but I like the idea of it being made from paper. It's recyclable and it's so easy to install, because basically you have one guy down in the truck. So he's the guy who's got the good job, and he's the guy who's maybe got the less pleasant job. And this is up in the attic now, and there's a guy basically there with a fire hose, and he's just spraying the cellulose insulation everywhere. And it flows like water. So, you know, you're not up in the attic with a knife or with a saw cutting insulation rolls, getting all itchy and all of those kind of problems. So that was a really, again, that was just a pure fluke. I sort of thought to myself, wouldn't it be interesting to use cellulose insulation? And to be honest, we were using a lot of petroleum-based insulation like polystyrene, and I wanted to use something that was a bit more natural and a bit easier to use in the roof. And that was a really good thing. I would highly recommend that, cellulose insulation. This was the delivery of insulation from Airboard in Limerick. And I'm rather embarrassed to tell you, it was an entire 40-foot truck of insulation. And there was people in the pubs in Wicklow literally talking about this. They were talking about, you know, have you seen the iceberg that's crashed into the Wicklow landscape? And when I look back on it now, it's just like an incredible amount of insulation. But, you know, it's still there. It's still saving me energy. It just sits there year after year and does its job. So Airboard had never been asked for 300 millimeter thick polystyrene before. And the guy actually spent 20 minutes trying to talk me out of it. And I was saying to him, hold on a second, I'm trying to buy 6 times the amount of insulation that somebody normally buys. Why don't you sell it to me? So he eventually sold it to me. Now, from the very, very outset, you know, we wanted to share the experience with others. And this is my good friend here at the laptop, Franz Frundorfer. Franz is from Austria and really inspired me to become an educator as well. And this is my business partner here, Art McCormack, and some other friends and colleagues as well from UCD. And I'm looking here, if you look at the window, guys, there isn't even, the windows weren't even installed, and we were running training programs on site. This is me here. I had starting to go grey, but not quite as grey or white as I am now. And again, I look back on that photograph with fondness to see, you know, that we really kind of wanted to get the knowledge out there. The windows are really quite cool. Again, I was trying to use as much nature-based products as possible. And the windows are made by a company in Austria called OptiWin. In fact, the windows were designed by the gentleman on the previous slide, Franz Frundorfer. And so they're wooden windows, but for insulation, they use this Portuguese cork. And that was quite an amazing innovation to me, that you could actually use cork to insulate window frames. And again, I love that photograph to show that. Some of the windows were, or are, I should say, they're still in the house, really enormous. And you can see the windows starting, you can see the house starting to come together here now. And thankfully, the window manufacturer sent 2 installers over from Austria, because again, we were just a bunch of Irish guys and we really didn't know what we were doing. I hope Patrick doesn't mind me saying that. But so anyway, so you can start to see the house coming together here. This window here is 5 meters long, and it's about 2.5 meters high. And that was probably the most nervous day up on site for me, because the digger driver that day, we was probably hung over. We're probably the only place in the world where you would use a 20-ton digger to install a 5-meter long passive house window. And you can see the Portuguese cork here in the window frame. So the U value is around 0.8 combined U value, and with a G value of around 0.62 if you're interested. And that window, you can sit in front of that window. It can be -5 degrees outside, and you can sit there in your shirt and feel very, very good comfort. The physics behind these high performance windows is really something. All the windows are installed outboard of the masonry layer. So essentially they're not put back in the concrete, but they're faced out, as you can see. And again, you can see now here we're starting to wrap the window frames in the insulation layer. And that's kind of a special detail for Passive House. One of my favorite photographs here, this is this guy here in the blue. His job title is Fenstermeister. That's actually a job title in Austria. And you don't have to be a genius to work out that he's a master of windows. And he's teaching Patrick about airtightness. And I love this photograph because still to this day, we're still doing this job of trying to educate people about airtightness and trying to reduce losses through drafts and so forth. And this photograph, is nearly, it's 17 years old now, and it brings back good memories. The airtightness was a big challenge for us. I won't lie to you. There wasn't the same knowledge, there wasn't the same selection of materials, and we basically weren't experts at it. But we got there in the end after a few tests, and nowadays we find it much, much easier. In fact, we're getting very, very good results on passive house projects now without much effort. So now we're starting to put the adhesive on the insulation boards. This guy is his nickname was Fez. He was from London. This is a bit of a memory here for my mother and my wife. So here we are, and I love looking back at this photograph here. So you can start to see now the T-cozy being fitted on the house, and we're just kind of completely enveloping the house with the polystyrene insulation. Some of the windows are in at that stage. A little bit further on now, all the insulation is on. And one of the things I didn't really like about the external insulation, perhaps it's different nowadays, but if the weather is really bad, it's very wet, very rainy, it's not the most stable of systems. At least it wasn't back then. So we had to actually basically almost put a circus tent over the whole house to protect it as we were doing the plastering going along. In any event, it turned out fine. It was great. And then I don't have too many slides on the mechanical systems. I was a bit disappointed, actually, I didn't have many, but essentially we have a whole mechanical ventilation system with ducts for that. And you can see here the 2 holes that we cored in the masonry blockwork as well for the fresh air in and the exhaust air out. And we really enjoy good air quality. I don't know if anybody was listening to the 6-1 news today. They were talking about air quality, we need air changes, and I'm thinking, Passive House has been doing this for 30 years. This is not a new idea to have mechanical ventilation and filtered air. They were talking about we should filter the air, and I was screaming at the radio saying, hello, we've been doing that for ages. A little bit further on, or quite a bit further on, one of the big things is about shading. You got to make sure that if you have a lot of south-facing windows, that you don't end up with an overheating issue. And Mairead and I, we couldn't afford this balcony when we first moved in. So for the first 2 summers, we didn't have this balcony, and the house did overheat. So it was a really good experience for us. And look at this, I love this photograph here as well. So this photograph was taken at 12 noon on the longest day of the year. So basically when the sun is at its highest, and you can see the shadow line there just at the window. So again, this is me not knowing what I was doing. I just looked up anti-Google, find out what the angle of the sun was, did a bit of trigonometry and worked out how deep the balcony needed to be, and it works perfect. It's like Newgrange, and we're kind of so happy with that. One of the main benefits of a balcony as well is you can start to grow your own grapes. And with my background as a landscape architect, one of the things I really love about the house, to be honest, is the garden. You can hear that in my voice, and it's just so beautiful to look out at the grapes every year in the autumn as the leaves are starting to turn. And there's not a day goes by that I don't pinch myself saying, how in the name of goodness did I end up living in such an amazing house? So a bit further on, obviously, this is a photograph then of the house completed. We called it Out of the Blue, and you can see why we might have called it that. And people sometimes ask us, why do you call your house Out of the Blue? And we send them this photograph if they're curious. So you can see the overhang here in front of the big window. That's that big 5-meter window we talked about earlier. And you can see the overhang upstairs for the south facing windows. This is the east facing facade here, and that all turned out kind of nice. I don't have too many interior photographs. I don't know why that is, but this is my daughter Aoife, and this is one of the twins. I think it might be Shifra. And this is again the 5-meter wide window. And Aoife, who's now 21, she was 21 a few days ago. She looks quite young there, but you can see, you know, the house is just full of light and it's very bright, and it's just a beautiful place to be. Some more views. The garden is maturing quite nicely now. We planted about 300 trees in the garden, and we don't have a lawn. I couldn't be arsed cutting grass. I always drive by people's houses and see people cutting grass, and I just think, oh God, I'd rather be sort of playing golf or doing gardening than cutting grass. So you can see it's turned out quite nice, and I want to show you the view from my desk. So everybody's working from home now, and this is the view where I work, and again, I'm just so grateful to have this beautiful view. That's the shading balcony that we talked about, and we have a lovely pond, and again, kind of super lucky to have all that. And I suppose that's the paradise that Mairead and I have created. That's probably the best photograph I could find today of the house, and so you can see basically how it's come from the very beginning to where it is now. And so that's kind of a little quick journey on that. I have 10 minutes left and I have about 600 slides, so I'm going to keep going here. So did it work? So, I mean, I had a feeling it was working. And when I knew it was working, I was looking at the energy bills. But Shane Coakley, Dr. Shane Coakley, who is, I think, on the line today as well. Shane is an expert in energy modeling and monitoring. And I got Shane involved and said, hey, Shane, any chance you could monitor the house for a year or two and see how it's working? You know, is it comfortable? You know, can we write some papers on it? Is the air quality good? Is the relative humidity good? Are we using the right amount of energy? And again, there'll be a copy of this presentation available on the PHAI website. But like, it hit every mark. And we modeled this in 2004. Right, you know, and it was monitored, you know, 13 years later. If you look at all the numbers there, it's just like boom, 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 boom. And again, this was done by somebody who really absolutely no idea what he was doing. So again, I would say to you, like, what's your excuse? That's kind of my challenge, I suppose, for this evening. So what would I do differently? There's a number of things I would do differently. I just want to focus on the first three, if you don't mind. Embodied energy is starting to become a big discussion. So far, Passive House, or historically, Passive House has been very focused on operational energy, but Passive House and the Passive House Institute is moving very rapidly now to embodied energy. I'm going to talk about domestic hot water very quickly, and then also off-site construction. So wood is actually 50% carbon and 42% oxygen. It's practically made from air. Well, we know it's made from air. You could eat it if you were really, really starving and your teeth were in good condition. So we should be building more with wood. Cement, on the other hand, if anybody can pronounce any word on this, apart from the word typical composition of cement, I'm going to give you a chocolate bar. If you can't pronounce it, I sort of of the opinion, it could be a bit dodgy rama. Now, there are good cements and there are kind of poorer cements, but like, look at the amount of cement and concrete we used in that house, and I would certainly like to use less in the future. And the Passive House Institute have been advancing on this quite a lot. And the AECB, the Association of Environmentally Conscious Builders, a wonderful group in the UK, they've developed this plugin now, if I could call it a plugin, for Passive House people called pH Ribbon. And you can actually do an analysis comparing different construction types. So what if I build in wood, or what if I build in concrete? And you can see from the table here that a cavity wall construction compared to a timber frame construction requires 50% more embodied carbon, 50% more, okay? So we've got to start moving in the direction of low embodied energy. And in our firm in Mossart, we're very, very focused on that now. I have to admit, I don't mind saying it really wasn't on my radar, quite honestly, back in 2004, but it very much is now. Now, what about showering? So no amount of air tightness or thermal bridging or insulation or windows, they can't do anything about the domestic hot water that we consume. We have 5 adults in our house, a dog and 2 cats. And the 5 adults, between us, we reckon we take about 1,250 showers a year. That's not me personally now, that's spread across the whole family. And so it's a huge amount of energy. And the photograph on the left here, I took in my mother's shower. Hi, Sheila. And I was down one evening installing a shower seat for her. And I used a thermographic camera because I didn't want to drill holes in the pipework and be unpopular with my mother. But yeah, but if you look at this photograph here, guys, the next time you take a shower, I want you to imagine, where's all that hot water going? Well, all that hot water is going directly into your septic tank. And here's a photograph of my septic tank that I found today when I was searching back through the archives. So those 1,250 showers that my family takes, all that hot water is going out literally down the drain. It's I can't tell you how frustrating it is. So if I was building another house, conscious that my wife is on the line here, but if I was going to build another passive house, I would definitely have one of these things in it. So there's several Drainwater heat recovery systems available now, and the Passive House Institute are certifying those, and some of them are really, really efficient. This one here will actually reduce the energy demand for showers or for domestic hot water basically by nearly 2/3. And it's something, I mean, I've no doubt in the world, at some point, these are going to be as standard as dishwashers and washing machines. We've really got to stop pouring all that hot water down the drain. It's, we just simply can't continue that. And it's something that most people aren't aware of. I would say to everybody on the line here tonight, you know, the next time you take a shower, I want you to look at the drain and imagine where all that hot water is going. So that's something maybe for everybody to think about. So we do a lot of work in the States, as Simon introduced, and especially in New York. And the Empire State Building is a building that fascinates me. And something that you may not know, right, is 103 stories high. It took just 1 year to build that building. Can you imagine that? 1 year to build the Empire State Building, 1 year and 45 days. And there must have been thousands and thousands of workers on it. So this is our house, this is out of the blue, and this actually took longer to build than the Empire State Building. That's quite a statement of fact, isn't it? And it's only 2 stories, it's not 103 stories. And okay, it's a big house, 3,900 square feet. So it took an enormous length of time. We actually we sold our house and we had to rent our house from the guy who bought it because our house took so long to build. So one of the things I'm really excited about is volumetrics. And volumetrics is basically where your house arrives sort of in parts, if you will. And this is a company based in UK, totally modular. And, you know, volumetrics is very much avant-garde now. A lot of people are talking about it. And okay, obviously they're spending time in the factory assembling this house, but at least you're not on site for a year looking at this house being built. So these are things that I would do differently, and maybe in the chat there's some questions, and maybe we could have a discussion about other things as well. There's a million things I would do differently, but I just wanted to highlight those. So with 5 minutes left, I just wanted to give you an idea. So basically, I stumbled across Passive House at a conference, convinced my wife to sell our family home. We built this experimental house. It worked. So far, so good. Everything was kind of looking rosy. And then the crash came in 2008. If you look at the brown line here, brown for a reason. The brown stuff hit the fan, didn't it? So essentially, you know, construction, the whole economy, you know, disappeared. And we were under pressure, Art, my business partner and I, we were really under pressure. What are we going to do? How are we going to survive? We had a little bit of knowledge, you know, where would we go with that knowledge? We could go to the UK, we could go to Europe, we could go to the US. And we decided to go to the US, and we set up a company there called Passive House Academy. And again, I'm eternally grateful to my 2 good friends here, Ken Levinson and Bronwyn Barry, who are both figureheads in the Passive House movement in the US and in North America generally, and very important, founding members and drivers and presidents, in fact, of the North American Passive House Network. And, they gave us a shot basically, and we started to develop training programs, and we started to do some passive house projects here. So this was the first certified passive house in New York City by architect Julie Moscovich. And you can, no prizes for guessing which is the passive house building on this street here. This photograph was from McAfee. And essentially, that was our first real project. This is a 200-year-old Brooklyn brownstone retrofit. And all of a sudden, we were doing retrofits on buildings in historical districts with no problem. Next thing we know, we're working on this project here. Deborah Molis from Handel Architects was the architect for this. She was a student of ours, so we were running training programs in New York City. And our business model basically was, if we share our learning, if we run training programs, maybe we might pick up some consulting along the way. And that turned out to be a good business model. So this was, at the time, the tallest passive house building in the world. And again, it's just an incredible dream to come across that. And myself and Deborah there at the top of the building looking down over the East River. We're currently working on this project for the Land Development Agency. It's designed by ABK Architects. It's 550 certified passive houses in Dunleary, Rathdown. I think my friend Thomas Henriksen is on the line tonight from Henriksen Studios. This is probably going to be one of the tallest, if not the tallest, passive house project in the world. And again, Mossart are very involved in this. We're the passive house certifiers. It's got nearly 2,000 beds. It's, by any metric, it's an enormous project. And, I'm very delighted to be involved in that. Henriksen Studios also got us involved in this project, slightly smaller in Battersea. And again, that's a 20-story 4-tower project as well. Some offices, we're doing a lot of commercial work as well. This building is actually designed, these buildings are designed by my own office, by Mossart, and delighted to say that they're going to have a timber skin. So they'll be certified passive house. Barry McCarran knows this project very well. This is about to be certified in the very near future. So we're the certifiers of this building. Mossart is, this is a ridiculously beautiful building in Enniskillen. 200 meters long, 5 stories high, just absolutely beautiful. And this is the kind of scale of projects that are now being built to the passive house standard. So we started off quite by accident getting involved in passive house in 2004. And, we've now done about 2 million square feet of passive house projects, which is and we had no intention of getting involved in passive house. And we started off on a little single family house project, and now we're doing some wonderful projects. So feeling, extremely grateful to just be involved in this. I feel like an accidental tourist at times, but really quite happy. We do a lot of education around the world as well. One of the things I'm really passionate about is education and training of architects. We've trained over 1,500 certified passive house designers. We've delivered that course in Melbourne and Beijing, all over the US, in Vancouver, obviously in Ireland as well. And we probably have, we've trained a lot of architects, a lot of designers, and that's something I'm very proud of as well. Also locally, we give guided tours to the local school kids who are doing construction studies, so they can get some inspiration as well. So it's kind of nice to give something back to the local community. So none of this could be done, without this wonderful team here. I'm looking around at my colleagues, and I just feel so grateful to be working with such a bunch of fantastic people. Look at them all, and what a great bunch of people. Dave is on the line here today, helping out. Thanks for that, Dave. And of course, my business partner, Art, in the middle. And again, feeling, very grateful to be working with such a good team. And if any of our clients are on the line today and you've worked with some of these people, you know how committed they are. And by the way, we're looking to extend our team. So if there are people out there that are interested in joining Mossart, we'd certainly love to hear from you. So last but not least, certainly not least, I really want to thank my own family. My wife, Mairead, here, and our 3 girls. You would have seen us in the very beginning when we left our house, our first house, And I suppose there's been a lot of water under the bridge since that time. And I couldn't have done what we have done without Mairead and without her support, and also with the support from all the girls. I must have made 70 trips to the US over and back for education and so forth. And I'm forever indebted to you, Mairead, so thank you for that. So that brings me to the end of the presentation, Simon. I hope I'm on time. I hope it was interesting, and I hope there are some questions that we could take from the audience. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, Tomas. Really interesting to hear your journey, and also good to hear that it's not a bad thing to jump in at the deep end and learn as you go along. We do have a couple of questions, so I'm going to move to those quickly, and I'm going to try and combine two here. Julie Hannon asked, you were saying you used a lot of concrete and you wouldn't do that now, and she was asking what would you use instead, and I guess that depends on the building. And then Elvery Callahan asked what was the structural frame material of the 20 to 40 story passive house buildings in London that you were looking at. Oh, you're muted, Tomas.
There you go. So obviously, look, buildings are structures. We've got to make sure they don't fall down, so we can't get away from concrete. But there are different types of concrete nowadays. There are even different types of aggregate that you can use. So you can use low embodied energy cement, and you can use recycled aggregates if you really want to. Of course, we're at the beginning of this journey now. So I suppose specifically to answer your question, I probably would use. For a single family house, I'd probably use a raft foundation. In other words, put some solid stone down, put down a base of polystyrene or something like that, without any need for foundation if the ground suits that, and then pour the floor inside of that. I mean, we used meters after meters after meters of concrete, whereas nowadays developers are very, very clever, and they're very kind of, they're like Scrooge with concrete, and we should be because it's expensive. So. And then obviously in the rising walls, you've got to use some structure in the rising walls. But I personally wouldn't build a concrete house again for myself. I prefer to build a timber frame. The second part of that question, I think, was insulation of high rise, was it?
It was the structural frame of the high rise buildings, but Lorenzo also asks, just to tie that together, what insulation would you be using on those high rise projects?
Yeah, so for high rise, after Grenfell, everybody is looking very critically now at the type of insulation products that we've been using. And, it's amazing to see the different codes around the world. Essentially, we've got to use, inflammable insulation materials in high rise buildings. I think that's patently obvious now to people, or at least use systems, that have a very, very high degree of fire integrity. And again, listening to Thomas Henriksen and others involved in the London Towers project, insulation and insulation type, flammability, detailing, all of that is absolutely crucial, Simon. So the construction system, it's out to bid at the moment, so it depends on what people are going to come back with. But it's probably going to be, most high-rise buildings, never mind this particular one, are probably steel frame systems. So you've got light gauge steel, which insulates between the studs, and then with an external layer of some sort of mineral wool insulation exterior to that.
Okay, thanks, Tomas. And Jacoba, I hope I've got that name correct. Apologies if I haven't. She's just saying she's about to put a second shower in, and are the Drainwater recovery systems isolated to a single washroom?
Really good question. So ideally, you would have all of your drain pipes, if you like, coming down into one central drain pipe, so that you could sort of tap into and recover all the heat from all of those. In a retrofit situation, I suppose you could perhaps pick the busiest bathroom in the house. Typically, there's a bathroom that's going to be busier than others. And they're quite easy to install, and there's not a lot of technology involved. It's essentially a copper pipe with some pores in it. but to answer your question, I mean, essentially, there are gravity-based systems, Simon, that work vertically. There's also horizontal systems now, believe it or not. So if you had two busy bathrooms and they weren't connected and they didn't share a drain pipe, you could actually probably put in two systems. They're not that expensive. We're talking hundreds here, not thousands. And they pay for themselves in very quick. So it's something. It's a big regret I have. The technology sort of wasn't available at the time when we designed our house. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Tomas. There are a few other questions there, but in order for us to keep to time and close at 8, I'm going to draw all the questions to a close. We'll maybe try and get back to you on some of the ones that are there. We're now going to jump into some breakout rooms, which just gives us all a chance to meet each other, maybe have a discussion about some of those other questions. So I'm going to ask Dave just to pop us out into breakout rooms for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and close up. Is it working, Dave? There we go.
Hi, hello, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great. They're in breakout rooms. I don't know if you were in there with them, were you?
I got kicked out of breakout room 8.
Ah, okay. They're coming back to be back now in one moment anyway, 30 seconds.
Oh, okay, cool.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Anthony. How are you?
Not too bad, Tomas.
Oh,
Yourself?
good to see you. How are things?
Not bad now. Plugging
Good,
away.
yeah. Geez, the breakout rooms are great. I was half hoping I might meet my mother, but she wasn't in my room. Did you have some good discussions?
Very good, yeah. Met one of your new guys.
Oh, great. Hey, Bronwyn, how are you?
Hi, Tomas. Fabulous to be here. My video's been disabled by the host, but I'm here and I'm just really lovely to meet you and see you and a bunch of other lovely Passive House people there.
I think we're going to enable all the videos in a few minutes. So this is our first time doing this session, Bronwyn. So we're a bit nervous on bandwidth and all of that. But hey, so good of you to turn up.
Lovely. No, good timing.
And so grateful to yourself and to Ken for all the help and support you've given me in the US, you know.
Oh, and right back at you. We couldn't have done it without you.
Oh, it's been terrific. Great. So look, I better shut up and let Barry back to the program. Thanks a million.
Take care.
Yeah, no problem. So it's for me to sort of close out now. I just want to ask Tomas, do we have a special guest on the line? I'm not sure.
I don't know. Dave, I don't know if you can. Wolfgang Feist was hoping to join us this evening, but he had a family event as well, so he was a bit conflicted. Mm-hmm. If you're there, Wolfgang, unmute yourself and say hello.
He's not on the line. I don't see Tomas, and possibly he is, but I can't see him on the list.
Okay, that's fine. That's great. So, okay, that's fine, Barry. You can crack on then.
Yeah, so that's okay. So he has provided us a wee message via email in case he wasn't able to come on. So I'll just read that out, I think. So here it goes. It's good to see a commitment to energy efficiency by building professionals. The know-how and the background has been freely distributed by the members of the community, and the know-how can be used by anybody willing to learn the basic principles. And there are lots of professionals who can gain from these. That gives us a perspective of another approach to a globalized world, not one ruled only by the rich and powerful, but a planet of humans who know about the science, share the know-how and apply it to their business in different places, within different cultures, and independent of beliefs, nationality, gender, and orientation. It's the science that will unify us. I especially thank Tomas for his contribution on a lot of levels in this process. So that's a very inspiring message from the man himself. It's a little bit unfortunate he wasn't here, but there you go. Excellent. So I think I'd really like to thank everybody for coming in. But before we do, and before we bid you a good night, I'm just going to ask Simon who we have lined up for the next session in the series. And I hope you all come back again to that session. So over to you, Simon.
Okay. Hopefully you can see my screen. So we've got 2 events confirmed. We're aiming to run these webinars every 2 weeks. So the next event would be on the 3rd of June. And that's myself. And I'm going to be talking about our new Passive House, which is about 95% complete. Not quite certified yet, but we're aiming to do that later in the summer. So that's Knockboy Barn Passive House, combining experts and newbies. And I would consider myself to be one of the newbies. And then the following fortnight on the 17th of June, we've got John Moorhead, who many of you will know has been working on passive house buildings for many years, and he's going to talk specifically around passive house performance in a temperate coastal climate. And sharing his 10 years of learning. So I hope we'll see you all at those. I'm going to quickly try and drop the links to the booking page into the chat while Barry closes up.
Yeah, so that's really left to me. I'll just give Simon that moment to actually drop that into the chat. But on behalf of the Passive House Association of Ireland, I'd really like to just thank everybody for coming to the event tonight. Tomas, just seeing as you were the guest presenter and were very inspiring in your delivery, is there anything you'd like to say just before we wrap up?
No, I think, look, well, thanks for having me this evening. It's, I suppose, the top experience for me in Passive House is meeting all these wonderful people across the world. Sorry. Essentially, you know, meeting wonderful people who are, you know, really want to build better buildings, more comfortable buildings, more healthy buildings. And I think COVID-19, I got my first jab today, and you know, the world has been shook by the coronavirus, and it's given us a bit of a jolt, I think, as a species, you know, as humans, to try and sort of reconsider what's important. And I think you know, we need to build better buildings. We need to lessen our impact on the planet. And I would say, in closing, Barry, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And if you stick your head above the parapet, the chances are, you know, you'll have a fun time and you'll have a good view and you'll have an inspiring time to do that. So, but thanks to everybody, and keep safe and keep well.
Very good. I think that's really good. So we'll bid you a good night then by waving you off. Okay. See you at the next one.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.